Virgo, you have been waiting, and I do not mean that in the casual, everyday sense of the word, the waiting of someone who checks their phone for a message or watches the clock through the last hour of a work day. I mean the other kind, the deep kind, the waiting that settles into the bones over months, maybe years, and becomes so familiar that you almost forget it is waiting at all, almost mistake it for simply the texture of life, the permanent condition of someone like you in a world like this. That kind of waiting, the kind that has tested you in ways that nobody around you has fully understood, because the most exhausting waits are always the ones that happen in silence, inside the chest, invisible to everyone except the person living them. That wait may be ending, not with a whisper, not with the cautious, half-hearted arrival of something that asks you to manage your expectations even as it lands. What is gathering in the atmosphere of your life right now has a different quality entirely, something that rhymes in the old symbolic language of fate and fortune with the word finally. The word that carries within it the weight of everything that came before it. Every closed door, every almost, every moment where the thing you needed arrived just slightly too small, just slightly too late, just slightly off in some way that you couldn't always articulate, but felt precisely in the part of you that knows the difference between what fits and what almost fits. This fits in the cartography of the soul that the ancient readers drew their symbols from. There is a figure that appears at moments of genuine reversal, genuine, not performed, not temporary, not the false dawn that breaks beautifully and then recedes before the real morning arrives. The figure of the Sunday raw and enormous and completely without apology. Not the polite warmth of a cloudy afternoon, but the full, overwhelming, undeniable fact of light after a long darkness. The sun does not ask whether you are ready. It does not negotiate its arrival or soften its impact out of consideration for how long you have been in the dark. It simply rises, and everything that was true in the darkness becomes visible in its light, including the parts of yourself that the difficult season obscured, including the possibilities that the waiting made difficult to see, including the version of your life that has been there all along, waiting to be illuminated rather than created from scratch. You did not need to be built from scratch. That is perhaps the most important thing I want to say to you tonight before we go anywhere else. The person who is about to experience what is gathering in your energy right now is not a new person, is not someone who finally became worthy of good things after a long period of being unworthy. You were always worthy. The difficulty was never evidence against that. It was simply difficulty, the kind that life distributes without consulting anyone's deserving, the kind that falls on extraordinary people as readily as it falls on anyone else, the kind that reveals character rather than determines it. And what it has revealed in you is considerable. Look at what you have done with the time that has felt like only waiting. Look at the ways you have grown in the spaces between the things you were hoping for. Look at the person you have quietly, without fanfare, without anyone handing you a certificate of completion, become. Because you are not the same person who entered this particular stretch of difficulty. The waiting changed you, not broke you, not diminished you, but refined you in the specific and irreplaceable way that only sustained patience can refine a person, burned away certain illusions, clarified certain priorities, taught you things about what you actually want, what you actually need, what you are actually made of, that you could not have learned any other way. That knowledge is not nothing. That knowledge is, in fact, the very thing that makes what is approaching sustainable rather than fleeting. Because there is a difference, a profound, life altering difference between abundance that arrives before a person is ready to hold it and abundance that arrives after. The first kind tends to pass through quickly, like water through open hands, because the internal structures that would allow it to be held and built upon were not yet in place. The second kind settles, takes root, becomes the foundation of something that compounds over time, that grows in ways that could not have been predicted at the moment of arrival, that changes not just a single season, but the entire trajectory of a life. You are in the second category. The structures are in place. The interior architecture has been built slowly, sometimes painfully, without your always knowing what you were building, through every decision you made to keep going when stopping would have been easier, through every moment of integrity maintained when compromise was available and tempting, through every quiet act of faith in a future that had not yet shown itself clearly enough to justify certainty. That architecture is solid now, more solid than it has ever been, and what is coming may have been waiting in its own way for exactly that solidity, for the version of you that can receive it without it passing through. Let me speak specifically about the nature of what may be shifting, because I feel it in distinct layers, and I think each layer deserves its own attention. The first layer is material, a change or the beginning of a change in the practical and financial dimensions of your life. I want to be honest here, as I always am. I cannot tell you the specific form this takes. I cannot give you a number, a date, a guaranteed outcome. What I can tell you is the quality of the energy, and the quality is one of reversal, of something that has been contracted beginning to expand, of a door that has been closed beginning to stand open, of resources in whatever form resources take in your particular life beginning to move in your direction rather than away from it. There is a feeling in this that resembles, in the old symbolic imagery, the Ace of Pentacles, the single coin held in an open hand, suspended against an open sky. Not a fortune already accumulated, the beginning of one, the seed of it. The first concrete, tangible, real world evidence that the cycle has turned and the ground is fertile again, and what you plant now will grow in a way that what you planted in the barren season could not. That first coin is significant not for its face value, but for what it represents, proof. Proof that the reversal is real, that the shift has substance, that this is not another almost, but the actual beginning of the thing you have been holding space for. The second layer is emotional, and this one I want to speak to with particular care because I think it may be the most underestimated dimension of what is approaching. When good things begin to arrive after a long drought, the emotional experience of it is rarely as clean and uncomplicated as we imagine it will be during the waiting. There is joy, yes, but there is also often a strange disorientation, a feeling of not quite trusting the ground that is suddenly solid beneath you, a waiting for it to be taken away, a, a bracing against the possibility that this is temporary, that the other shoe is somewhere above you preparing to fall, That response, if it comes, is not ingratitude. It is the nervous system of someone who has been in survival mode for a long time, slow to register that the threat has passed. Watch for that in yourself. Notice if the arrival of something good is met with a part of you that immediately begins looking for the catch, for the hidden cost, the coming disappointment, the reason why this cannot last. That part of you was useful once. It protected you during the season when things did not last, when hope was a liability rather than an asset, when expecting good things only made their absence more painful. But that season may be ending. And the protective pattern that served you through it does not need to be carried into what comes next. It can be acknowledged, thanked for its service, and gently, consciously set aside. What comes next deserves to be met with open hands and a heart that has finally, after everything, given itself permission to believe. The third layer is relational, and this one surprises people sometimes. The way significant personal shifts tend to ripple outward into the social world in ways that were not anticipated. As your circumstances change, as your energy shifts from the contracted quality of someone waiting and holding on to the more expansive quality of someone whose moment has arrived, the people around you will feel it before you announce it. Some of them will rise to meet it with a genuine joy that cost them nothing because they were never rooting for your difficulty. Others may respond in ways that are more complicated, with a discomfort they cannot name, a subtle friction that appears without obvious cause, a recalibration of the dynamic between you that reflects the fact that the version of you they had grown comfortable with is no longer the version standing in front of them. Let those recalibrations happen without trying to manage them. You are not responsible for making your growth comfortable for people who preferred you smaller. The relationships that are truly built for you will stretch to accommodate the expanded version of you without losing their integrity. The ones that cannot stretch were always at some level dependent on a version of you that was less than you actually are. And their discomfort with your flourishing is, in its own way, a gift. It shows you clearly, without ambiguity, where the genuine love lives and where the performance of it does. Something is breaking open. The word I keep returning to is not change, not shift, not improvement. It is breakthrough. The specific, sudden, irreversible quality of something that has been pressing against a barrier for a long time, and finally, with one last application of accumulated force, moves through it completely. Breakthroughs do not look like gradual progress. They look like nothing happening, nothing happening, nothing happening, and then everything happening at once. The time before the breakthrough is indistinguishable from the inside, from simple stagnation, until it isn't, until the thing moves, until the wall that seemed permanent turns out to have been temporary all along, a fact that was always true but only becomes visible at the moment of passing through. You may be at that moment. The wall may be thinner than it looks from where you are standing. The breakthrough may be closer and faster and more complete than the pace of the recent past has given you any reason to expect. And when the pressure of everything you have been carrying finally finds its release in something real and tangible and undeniably present in your life, I want you to receive it without apology, without the instinct to make it smaller for an audience that might be uncomfortable with your fullness. without the old reflexes of unworthiness that have nothing to do with who you actually are and everything to do with what the difficult season taught you to expect. You have been waiting for this. The waiting was real and it was hard and it lasted longer than it should have. And what is coming in, whatever specific, surprising, perfectly timed form it chooses to arrive, may be equal to the waiting in a way that makes the waiting make sense. Not justified by it, not caused by it, but proportionate to it. The size of the arrival matching in some way that defies easy explanation, the size of what was endured to get here. This is your moment, not in the small sense, in the one you have been carrying quietly, privately, through every day that tested your belief in it. That moment is not a myth. It is not a consolation story you told yourself to survive. It is a real place in time, and the distance between where you stand right now and where it waits for you may be shorter than any map you have drawn of your own life has yet been able to show. Stay open, stay present, and when it arrives, let it be everything it is. If something in these words landed with the weight of truth tonight, if this found you at exactly the moment you needed to be found, trust that. Subscribe and stay close, because what is unfolding in your story deserves to be witnessed all the way through, and the best of it may be just ahead.